Welcome, friends, to another episode of Sketchy Ideas, the live point-counterpoint debate podcast, where my co-host Michael and I talk about business, leadership, personal development, whole bunch of stuff dealing with growing your dream. And we dive into things that you might not think are actually relevant, but in fact, we're going to explain to you why maybe some of these sketchy ideas are so important to at least take a look at and try or not try. I'm your host. I'm Brad James.
And I'm Michael Rampola.
And today, Michael is going to walk us through something that a lot of you talked about last week in terms of how do we train and deal with those quote-unquote generational gaps. So we're going to dive into some performance analysis techniques that Michael uses over at Spirity to help with developing training for those different generations. All right, with that, I don't want to keep stealing your thunder, but I do know in terms of performance analysis, us millennials, at least, supposedly like to be told what to do, and we don't like to take accountability, and we're not very responsible, and we're not responsible for our own learning, all that good stuff. So maybe you can dispel that a little bit by helping our audience figure out how to actually understand and analyze what we bring to the table.
There's at least one or two things I imagine that you've got a little bit of value in there somewhere. We just got to maybe dig a little bit harder to uncover it. That sounds fair.
Only a little bit, this much.
Well, just a little bit, just a smidge. So thanks, Brad. I appreciate the setup, all of it. So listen, a lot of times we get that idea where, gosh, my people just aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. They should know this stuff. They should know. If I could just get them to do what I need them to do, we'd be in a much different position. You're not wrong.
Yes.
The challenge is figuring out why that's happening. And oftentimes that idea of they're just not doing what they're supposed to be doing gets met with an immediate obvious solution. Well, let's train them. Let's send them to training, or let's give them some training or some education. And that's not a wrong answer.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. It's a common answer. The thing is, it's a good solution, but only in some certain situations. In my experience and in our experience at Spirity, we see training misapplied all the time. We see coaching misapplied all the time. Coaching and training are different solutions for different kinds of needs. And it's identifying what the real need is helps you identify which is the right solution. And if you're applying coaching where training is needed or training where coaching is needed, that might be why you're so challenged by those darn millennials. Let's find out.
That's me. Yeah.
Yep.
So, hey, tell me a little bit more about where is this all coming from? Like, why have you chosen, where have you learned this methodology that's really helping your clients specifically understand how to implement what you just said?
Absolutely. So I personally learned this methodology as a trainer. I was with an organization where my title when I got hired was training consultant. And with that title, as you can imagine, supporting folks in the field, they would call up and say, my people need training. And everybody in the training consultant role would say, I'm on my way. And we would, fly or drive out to the location and do some training. And what the manager of that team quickly discovered was training wasn't always the right answer. And if we were always positioning ourselves as providers of training, then we would always be called to deliver training. Reminds me of a line, which is, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So instead of being trainers and training consultants, she gave us a crash course in this methodology called performance analysis, and we became performance consultants instead, meaning we're consulting on the performance of your team, not leading with solution, but leading with analysis. So that's where I learned the methodology. Sense. Yeah, and it's a much... Well, it goes back to some other concepts that a lot of our audience will be familiar with. Design thinking, innovation thinking, root cause, problem analysis, all that kind of stuff gets back to the core of figure out what the real problem is before you start applying solutions.
So let me just understand you correctly. Like you guys were training people. Like that was a lot of what you were doing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, training is an action, but performance is the result, right? So
you got it.
You repositioned what you guys are doing because it wasn't just training, right? This sounds like something that a lot of our viewers struggle with. And if you are one of those people, let us know, because we feel you, right? Like I am a marketing and sales consultant, but that also means I do coaching, training, all that other stuff. So really, what Michael's telling me right now is I need to be a marketing and sales performance expert that finds the right solution. So I'm learning already.
Good. Yeah, you're on the right track already. So perfect. So let's get into that. So let me introduce some. So here's the basic 6-part framework of performance analysis. And I'm gonna explain each of these in a second here. But part 1 is define or describe the real problem. Define or describe the real problem. Number 2 is explore, and we're going to explore something called fast fixes, and I'll tell you what those are here in a second. Then we're going to check consequences, reinforcement to make sure that the rewards and the systems in place are reinforcing the right behaviors. Number 4, then once we understand the gaps, we're going to look for the source of the gaps, and we're going to talk about what this is a really important 4-part structure. There's one of 3 sources, one of which training is the right answer. And then we'll get into removing other obstacles, and then finally developing a robust solution. Notice that solutions comes at the end. We're not going to really deliver and develop a robust solution until we've exhausted our other options, because sometimes there's small things in the way, removal of which will get us back on track very quickly, and we don't need a complete robust solution. It might just be a quick fix. So that's why quick fixes comes in already at number 2.
Nice.
Yeah. So let's go to number 1. So number 1 is just, you give me. Yep.
So I'm just trying to, like, we always talk about begin with the end in mind. But if we don't know what that end needs to be, what you're telling me is we actually need to seek first to understand.
I think you might be onto something there. That sounds like a very core tenet of what we're talking about here.
Interesting. All right.
Interesting. Might be onto something. So let's do that. Let's begin with the end in mind. So define the problem or the gap. So this is where a manager would say, my people aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. My question would be, describe to me in detail what it is that they're supposed to be doing. So let's make sure we clearly have a clear understanding, documented what the expectation is. And then we identify
document what the expectation is. Think like
so this might look something like
a while ago.
No worries. This might look something like a job description or a performance outcome. It might be just a SMART goal. Yes, see previous episode. It might be a SMART goal, most important of which part is measurement. And this is where we're also going to clarify another important point. So basically what we're defining is what good looks like. I'm going to switch markers. We're going to need to define what good looks like, or what the expected performance needs to be. Once we have that, come on, really? Of all the days, help me out here. Come on, stash all markers.
What good looks like. This is what good looks like.
It's right here. This is.
Oh, see, look. It's right here.
That? Good. What does good look like? Good. I like it. I like what you did there. All right. Oh, and that one's dead. All right.
And we're off to a running start, friends.
Oh, there we go. All right, good. Brown today. That'll be awesome. All right. What good looks like. Listen, folks, it's sketchy for a reason. What good looks like. And then get clarity around what we're doing right now. So describe in detail what it is they're supposed to be doing, and then now tell me what it is that they're doing right now. And what we get from there is the gap. And here's where an important question comes in. This is one of the important first measurements is, okay, that's the gap. What's the cost of the gap? From a time or revenue or dollars perspective, how expensive is that gap right now? And you might discover, and I oftentimes, there you go. So there might be a discount even on the gap. This is where I'm going to apply our 80-20 rule in reverse. A good guideline is if this thing that's not right is happening 20% or less of the time, then you might leave it alone.
Yeah.
If it's an exception instead of a rule. Oftentimes we will apply, this is the Oh gosh, it's tearing apart the house, right, to get rid of the fly, or it's right, it's completely redoing, it's buying a new car because you ran out of gas. It might be that the solution is such a small problem, and it just feels like an annoyance, and therefore we believe it needs to, put a lot of time and attention on it, but in the end, it doesn't need it. So evaluate the cost of doing nothing. Take a moment and say, what if I leave it alone? Is that likely more or less expensive than making the investment to do something about it? And we do that back at number one before we go any further. Assuming we say yes, it's still worth pursuing. This is where we go into exploring fast fixes.
All right. So for those of you, just to recap what Michael just said, he said, hey, take a look and define it using SMART goals. And then if the cost of achieving that SMART goal is too much, the opportunity cost, so economics, microeconomics, if it costs too much to fix it, maybe let it go, right?
There you go.
All right.
You got it. Perfect. So then we're going to go to fast fixes. And there's 4 quick fast fixes. Number 1 is expectations. Goes back to the first question. If you told me exactly what good looks like, right? Now I'm going to go to the members of your team and I'm going to say, okay, if I was to ask each member of your team to tell me what it is they're supposed to be doing, if I was to have them describe what good looks like, would their answers be the same as yours? Would their answers be the same person to person? And would they be the same as your answer?
Yeah, this looks like good. This is good. This is what good looks like.
What good looks like. If we're all in agreement, then check, that one's done. But I can't tell you how many times that right there stops the whole conversation. Because the number one thing your people need to be successful at work is the resources to do their job. And the number one resource they need is clear expectations. The number one thing a leader can give their team is clear expectations about what good looks like. And to Brad's point, the vista, right? Where are we going, and what's the vision? What's in and out on the way to get there? Yep. If your team can't describe to you darn close to what you would expect from an accuracy standpoint, then that misalignment is the number one cause of people not doing what they're supposed to be doing, because there isn't clear expectations. That's the fastest fix.
I want to be sure everybody understands that Michael is not saying you have to micromanage it down to a T, dotted I's, T's crossed, right? This is why if you paid attention to the episodes and you've seen all the episodes we've done, we've actually been building up to this point with a number of our episodes. And if you pay attention and go back to some of those earlier episodes, SMART goals, when we talked about vistas, when we talked about passive communication and buy-in, when we talked about traversing the 4 C's, all that stuff, we're getting to the point where now we are at a point where you're going to begin piling these small techniques and tactics together. But the challenge with this is understanding that there's a balance to this whole framework that Michael's outlined.
Good call out, Brad. Thank you for that. So let's assume that the answer is yes, they've got it right. They understand exactly what they need to do. Number 2 thing is going to be obstacles and resources. Is there something getting in the way of them getting it done? And think simple. Might be something very simple. I used to manage hotels. One simple thing is if the housekeepers don't have enough clean towels on their linen cart, they can't clean the rooms. The room's not fully clean. Room might be perfectly clean, but if they're short even a hand wash, even a hand cloth, right? They don't have the full complete set. That room isn't back in service. That's a tiny little resource. When you, in the grand scheme of a hotel, it might be, that shampoo bottle, that little thing, right? But if it's not in the room, that room isn't perfectly clean and that housekeeper can't sign off on it. So all the way back up the supply chain, the obstacle to their success might be, did the housekeeping manager order enough shampoo this week? Right? Why are rooms not getting clean on time? Well, because they're not coming into service on time. Why not? Because of shampoo. What do you mean about the shampoo? You go back up the chain and it's something simple to resolve, and it gets us back on track. So explore fast fixes. Is there an obstacle or a missing resource that, if put in place or if adequately distributed, would enable accomplishment of the goal? That's fast fix number 2.
Okay. And would let me ask you a question on that one. Do you think so I know we've got a number of entrepreneurs on here or business owners, maybe they've been doing this all by themselves for a while and they're beginning to scale and they're now dealing with this performance analysis piece. What is one thing that as you're building a business, you might be able to do in order to follow and do exactly what you said?
That's a great
Do you have
question.
any thoughts on
Folks,
that?
if you're paying attention on the chat, I'd love to get some audience on this one. I think that's a really great question to get some audience interaction. Answering that question, getting answers to that question, having clarity as a leader on what the answer is to that question, it's an important practice. And most people, I don't think, spend enough time on it. They don't spend enough time thoughtful and intentionally considering and putting the answer to that question down, so to speak.
Makes sense. All right.
So I'm gonna leave that one for a second and see if we get any engagement on it. Number 3 is going to be observations and feedback. Do you know from your observation as the leader exactly what's happening? Or are you making assumptions? Are you basing your feedback? Are you basing your assessment on a couple small examples? You'll often find this is happening when somebody says something along the lines of, well, everybody says. Who's everybody? How many people is everybody, especially out of the whole, right? Or no one is, well, is no one? No one is ever, like anything that is an absolute, that is a superlative. Those are red flags in performance analysis that need to be explored and clarified, because it is almost impossible for it to be true that everyone says or no one is doing that thing ever. Almost impossible.
There's only one group of people who believe in absolutes. Our movie themes for the day.
Oh, I don't know it. Stump the chump. I don't know it.
May the force be with you. There's only one side of the force that believes in absolutes.
Very nice. Is it the light side or the dark side? I got a feeling it's.
We'll leave that one alone. We'll
leave that one alone. All right. Again, for those paying attention at home, come on in. So observations. Do you know from your personal observation, and then are you giving feedback on those observations, which, as you can probably guess, goes back to expectations?
Yeah.
Are you observing? Do you know for sure exactly what's happening, and are you giving feedback on that, or are you just amassing this list of complaints and not actually letting your people know about what's working or what's not working and how things can be different? And right. Ryan will get in our notes about our episode on feedback and how to give and receive great feedback. You can absolutely leverage that gift model here when giving and receiving feedback, because the feedback on those observations, all of this, by the way, we're not even near training yet. We're still in the early stages of, we can still take care of this quickly and easily, which is why we're in that fast fixes category.
Wait, so when I'm running my company and people aren't doing their jobs and I go, hey, we got to go train these people, I could be putting in way more work and trying to build some training rather than clarifying expectations or observing and making small quick fixes, or maybe I'm relying too much on Tatwati, to figure this out, or any number of those things, right?
Absolutely right. And you know what? I think that's a good call out, because so let's put Tatwati under our red flag. Let's put absolutes under our red flag. We'll put should here while we're at it, right? Anything in that neighborhood in performance analysis is a red flag. Anything in that neighborhood is a red flag. And to your point, we're not even into training yet, which means, right, the resource allocation on training is pretty massive, especially if you're going to build it yourself, which I don't always recommend.
Yeah, or even it's massive even if you're going to bring people in, because there's a time sink, right? So
you got it.
I mean, I don't want to steal your thunder on that one, but
no, you're doing fine. Come on, no, yeah.
I feel like when people think about training, they're like, I got to overhaul everything, and you're like, and then they want it tomorrow, and you're like, oh my God, this isn't. I want change now. When do we want it? Now. Why do we want it? Now. Because we deserve it. Like, and you're saying to yourself, when people are bringing this up, you're going, wait, understand change, especially when you're dealing with people, especially right now. You're asking people to change overnight, and you're unless you have built this perfect culture, which I promise you, even the big guys, the best CEOs, the best leaders in business right now are struggling with. They are struggling to figure out how do we shift culture, because the way training used to be done, and hopefully we'll talk about this as we go down this path, like it used to be in person and now we're in remote and you can't necessarily train on techniques like in BPODs. That's one of the reasons why we've been building up all these digital assets forever, to try and train people virtually and then give them the tools to go and practice it on their own and verify it on the back end. But even that has flaws, right?
Right.
Because you can't be there and hands-on, and technology only goes so far. So if you can find a way to do this without having to build out this whole training curriculum, which I promise you, friend, even if you've been doing this for years, documenting that is step one. And I promise you, most companies that we're talking to and leaders we're talking to right now do not have a technical writer or a trained curriculum writer who goes through observation in order to build curriculum on their staff.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
You're right. I mean, I agree with you. I'm drawing a little document icon here because the documentation of all of the above is key. Because there's only so much tribal knowledge that anybody can carry around, and you multiply that across your team, you actually have a major risk of knowledge loss. So document this stuff. Get it down on paper. Get it down on paper somewhere.
G Suite, just Google Drive, or if you're using Microsoft 365, you can use Microsoft. Or if you're not one of those people, you like Dropbox, use Dropbox. Hey, there's a bunch of free tools: Trello, Asana, Basecamp, like. The list goes on, and
I don't care. Yep.
It doesn't matter what it is or where it starts. You can always migrate it, and that's the biggest thing. And here's the thing: process is not set in stone anymore. It's always going to change. Always. That's why all these documents are living. They're breathing. And if you're the leader of the company, guess what? You're the owner of that right now. And if you're struggling to find like things that are productive to do right now to grow, I would recommend, and I always recommend to people who are building startups and have regular cash flow. If you have regular cash flow, you're going to begin scaling. Now's the time to start actually writing down everything you do. Hence the reason, like with the sales process, we talk about documentation first. Seek first to understand what you got, and then you move forward. Because if you don't, you're going to create chaos.
100%. And every little variation, I saw it drawn like this once. It's a force diagram. It's here's my physics background coming in, right? If this is the main thrust where everybody's going, and even a couple people are a little bit off that angle, right? You multiply that all out, right? And the variance from there is pretty quick, right? Actually, I think that actually even nets out to 0 if I remember correctly. Versus you get all these arrows pointing in the same direction, and how much faster that acceleration goes.
Dude, that North Star is so important. And like, if you've got vehicles to get there and you know how those vehicles work, document the vehicles and begin to delegate as best you can. And understand that the training, just because you give them the training, doesn't mean they're going to have it perfect the first time. And in fact, if you've got process for them, realistically, I'll tell you this much. Millennials love tweaking process because they know technology and they go, the old way of doing it, I found a better way to do it. You just got to let me do it.
Yep. So I'm gonna add another layer.
I'm stealing the thunder. We're already
not.
down
No,
to
this
training.
is This is a team effort. Let me add one more thing. Back to observation. If you don't have clear expectations, you're not observing what's going on. That vector diagram is behind a cloud for you. You don't know.
Yeah.
You're making some hazy assumptions, and that is a huge missed opportunity. So I just want to call out.
So what's one way? What are some ways, without giving away the farm? What's one way people can begin to observe if they do not necessarily have visibility?
Great. I call this playing dumb. Great question. I call it playing dumb. I'm gonna draw a really bad dunce hat right now. There, dunce hat goes like this, goes like this. We'll put the beanie on top. All right. Call it playing dumb.
All right. There you go, friends. Just be dumb.
Just play dumb. Go talk to the people and say, hey, you're doing this day to day. I'm not. Show me what it is you're doing. Can you just walk me through this? show me what it is that you're doing. Or in another sense, maybe, listen, I just heard about a new way of doing this. I don't know, but I realize I don't even know, we might already be doing that way. Can you show me? Play
Mm-hmm.
dumb. Go play dumb and ask a bunch of questions that you may or may not know the answers to. You can go play dumb and learn by playing dumb, because then you get and go. And here's the key point on all this, and I'll even write the word up on here. You have to be curious. So maybe my beanie isn't the right hat there, but you have to come with it with a
like
sense
this
of
hat.
curiosity. There you go. That's perfect. Meme forthcoming. You have to go in with a sense of curiosity. If you go in thinking you're going to find something bad, it's going to be obvious that you're looking for negatives. If you go in, thinking that what you're going to find you're not going to like, people will pick up on that tone. But if you go in with a true sense of curiosity, really want to learn, I'm here to learn, I'm here to understand, you will get that much more valuable insight, and you're going to bring yourself down in a good way to the level where other people can then, well, they'll be willing to share with you. I don't understand. You're the expert in this area. You do this every day. Teach me and show me.
Great rapport builder too.
Oh, it is. It absolutely is. All right, so we're at the next thing, which is one of my favorites, which is reinforcement, or what I'm going to shorthand here as upside down consequences.
Whoa, upside down consequences.
Upside down consequences.
It's
Often born opposite day. George Costanza would be happy. If it's upside down consequences, what happens it's always unintentional, and it comes from the unanalyzed outcomes from the inputs. Here's what happens. The negative, well, first of all, core principle, the behaviors that get reinforced get repeated. And by reinforced, I mean rewarded. So if any behavior I'm engaging in is giving me some sort of personal positive reward, that behavior is going to get repeated. Whether that behavior is productive or destructive for anybody else, it's what is it doing for me? That's basic human biology, psychology. Right.
Yeah.
You know this. So as a result, what you need to analyze is what consequences are resulting from the reinforcements, even the rewards and the systems that we have in place. Here's a simple favorite. Oftentimes on a team where everybody on the team is responsible for the same work product, the person who is really, really good at it gets more of that same work to do. And the person who is struggling or behind doesn't do as much, because we don't really care on the whole how much, who's doing what, as long as it all gets done. So the person who's struggling, manager will say, listen, let me take some of that off your plate, and I'll give it over to this other person who's already ahead of schedule. But what I just did is I told the person who didn't do as much work, don't worry, you'll still get paid the same amount and get to go home at the same time. And the person who's fast and good got told, here you go, here's more work, and you'll get it done the same amount of time, so I'm not going to increase your pay. So I'm literally reinforcing the wrong behaviors. People who are struggling get better outcomes on the whole than the people who are good. Now, everybody as a manager has done this. We've all done this, because why? It's efficient, and it gets me to my overall outcome, which is this is all the work that needs to get done today. But and unless sometimes you have to do it. Now, in the short term, you have to do it. If you're not careful, Satiety creeps in, and that just becomes the way that we operate. People who are faster get more, and the people who are slower get less, and I don't actually change any rewards. And over time, the good slip back because they're actually getting overwhelmed, and the poor don't go any faster because there's no incentive for them to go any faster or get any better. Upside down consequences, almost always unintentional and born out of not focusing on and not differentiating a process, not focusing in on the details and identifying which behaviors do I want to see, which behaviors do I want to see repeated? How do my systems and processes reinforce those behaviors? Let me give you one more, and actually, no, I'll give you one more because we're at time. But here, I'll tell you this. I have the very good fortune on Friday, I'm actually going to be a guest on another podcast, and this is what they actually asked me to come in and talk about. So I got to save some of my other case studies, otherwise I got to spread the wealth.
There you go.
But there's 2 or 3 other really good case studies on this. And this is a really important thing to explore and analyze. If you've gotten to this point and everything's good, upside down consequences may very well be the culprit. Now, Brad, we're technically at our half hour, but we got to at least talk about training because technically we haven't even talked about training yet.
Correct. And it probably would be at least a good idea. So if you want to hear more about this framework that Michael goes through, you're going to have to wait for another time, but we're going to take 5 minutes. We're going to dive into, hey, you've knocked out these other things. And I also do know that because they do this is what Michael does. If you were to contact him or hit us at info@sketchyideashow.co or .com, I believe, we'll drop that in the comments and make sure that we've got that right. And then Michael will actually be able to come in and do this with you, either one-on-one or with your team or with your board.
Absolutely.
Or any of that stuff. I mean, this is, you can see, hey, we spent 30 minutes on it and Michael's blitzing through this and we barely got through half of it. So
right.
This is a process, right? Michael, tell me if I'm wrong. This is a process that you walk people through and it takes weeks or months depending on it because you're trying to act as technical writer, observer, to help coach those leaders through each of these 6 steps and go, hey, now we're going to build out training on the last one. So let's dive into some training. And when you get to that point, what does that look like? Like, what are the 4 big rocks or the big rocks in the jar when you get to that point?
You got it. Let me give one more thing. So Brad's right. If you go all the way through this, it's going to take some time. But don't be daunted by that because as you heard me share earlier, you might find in a couple questions and in a quick conversation that the solution is actually easier than you might think and be a fast fix that takes the whole thing and solves it for you. So don't be daunted by Brad's point, but Brad is right. For a truly robust, if we get down to a big solution that's going to transform your business and create a whole new future for you, that's going to take some time and it's an investment that'll be worth it. All right, let me hit the 3-part here for the framework. What's the real source of the problem? If we've resolved all these other things, now we're going to figure out what's the source of the problem. It's going to be one of 3 things. The people who people who are set up to do the work either can't do the work.
There you go, shooting all over me again.
I'm sorry about that. Can't do the work, won't do the work, or don't know how to do the work. Can't is a question of skill. They literally cannot do it. I cannot jump more than, well, I don't even know how I could probably get a good couple feet, but I can't get 4 feet, right? Some people might, I can't. I might not actually even have the physiology to do it no matter how much I train on it. So can't is a question of skill.
I jump over phone books.
There you go. Won't is a question of motivation. I can't do it because I literally can't. I don't have the skill set. I always use the example of lift this 50-pound box and put it in the storeroom, right? Can't might be, I literally cannot do it. I don't have the physiology, or I might be a differently abled person and I literally just can't do that job. Won't is a question of motivation. I can do it. I just don't wanna. That's a motivation issue. Don't know, this is a knowledge issue. Now, if you're paying attention, it should be pretty obvious to you. Only one of these things can be solved with training. And it's knowledge. You can't, I have seen many people sent to training, knowledge, for a motivation issue. Well, that person they just don't want to do it. I'll send them to training. Well, you know what? It's not about the knowledge. They know exactly how to lift the box.
Right.
They have the skill and ability and they know where to put the thing. They just don't want to do it. And I'll tell you right now, I'll give you the 3-part of what's the solution. And motivation, the solution to won't is coaching. And it's back to expectation setting. It's showing an individual that what you need them to do gets them what they want. That's a coaching technique, and it's a framework that we teach the leaders that we coach and support. Can't, a skill issue. This is typically hiring or role alignment. We either brought the wrong people in because we didn't properly identify the skills, or we need to realign the roles and responsibilities around who we have to get the job done. Don't know, that's where training comes in. Training is a great solution.
Did everybody hear that? Like, literally, the last straw is literally if it's just knowledge. If they actually don't know, and here's the cool thing about the way the world works these days. If they can do it, and they're motivated to do it, so they're hungry, they're honeable because they're motivated, and they're a good person, realistically, they may even figure out how to do it on their own. using the Google machine.
You're not wrong.
So,
Because a skilled and motivated person will go and learn. And that's a whole nother thing that you can hire for, which is called learning agility, fancy word, but it's the, do I know what I know and do I know what I don't know? And can I identify the gaps in my knowledge and then go find the learning to fill in those gaps to address a new and unfamiliar situation? You can hire for it. It's one of those few things that are hard to teach though.
talk about a sketchy idea.
There you go. So folks, as Brad well pointed out, we're at stage 4. Training is now possibly a solution, but up until now, it wasn't really training. But if you'll notice, there's a thread. You pull it back. Here's the thread. That knowledge question showed up already. Where did it show up? Feedback, clear expectations, what good looks like.
Yep.
Training, knowledge, clarity around what it is I'm supposed to be doing is here. It's been here this whole time. There's 3 or 4 simple solutions that aren't robust training that more often than not will prevent the need for training. And I just literally talked myself out of a gig, and I'm okay with that. Because what I ultimately want you to do is get better at what you're doing. I want you to be a better leader. I want your business to grow. And I don't want you to invest in training if it's not going to solve your problem. I don't want you to buy this car if it's not going to get you where you want to go. That's bad consultant sells you the thing that he wants you to buy, even if it's not the thing that you need. So that's why we do this conversation, because if training is not the right answer, if coaching is not the right answer, if rehiring is not the right answer, then don't use that solution. And be wary of a consultant who knows from the very first conversation exactly what you need. Because I don't know that they've done enough analysis. So there you go.
Well, here's the deal. When you bring in a consultant, you're bringing in an expert to help expedite the thing. Right? Like that's their job. That's why you bring in people outside to work as contractors with you to coach and consult you to help speed up the process. So, because here's the deal. If you can find anything on the internet, right? Whether it's right or wrong. That's part of why we put this show together, because we want to help all of those people we work with and those who are finding us to understand that, hey, there's a time and a place to do those things. Now, the challenge is when do you find the right people and what does the right person look like to help you guide that, right? Like there are things that Michael does really well, and there are things that my team does really well. And then there are things that I don't do well at all. That's why I have a team. But, that's beside the point.
Right.
The challenge is with any of these ideas is you are responsible for understanding vision, intent, strategy of what needs to be done, so that when you bring a Michael in, they're going to go through that anyway, because otherwise, if you don't have those answers, it's going to take longer, right? But if you have those answers nailed down, when you talk about vision, strategy, all that stuff, that's still important. But guess what? In this age we live in, how you execute on that is what we're getting into with each of these different lessons. So go back, watch some of the original episodes, even though they're not nearly as good, because our drawing skills have definitely improved, at least Michael's have. But we're leading up to this point, and we're going to begin bringing in some guests who will help you with implementing some of those tactics and some of those techniques. And Michael's willing to do that. I'm willing to do that, right? So all you got to do is get in touch with us, and we'll help out with that, right? Tell me if I'm wrong, Michael. I'm offering what we do.
You're 100% right. You're encouraging people to seek us out to help them solve their problems. Yeah, I think that's probably a great idea. We'd love to help, right? That's what we do.
Yeah.
Now listen, I got to do one last link. Because technically we started on millennials and we haven't really resolved them. Here's the challenge, millennials. You look really smart. You come in and you threaten with your knowledge and your apparent experience and your skill set and your speed. Generations before you don't understand how fast you're able to apparently move. And therefore they make a lot of extra assumptions about what you should also know. All right. I'm gonna make a long distance reference here, which is always carry a towel. All right. So it's the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference. The guy carrying a towel is assumed to also have a lot of other things with him. And if he doesn't have them, obviously he just forgot it. I'm more than willing to loan that to him. So millennials, you look like you're always carrying a towel around. And as a result, the leaders around you think you know a lot of things and can do a lot of things you might not know or be able to do. Both sides need to have a better conversation. about what I think you know how to do. And the millennials need to be able to say and willing to say, listen, I know I'm new here and I know that I'm supposed to be good, but I also need to be willing to admit that I don't know this stuff yet and I want to learn. So both sides need to come to the
Yeah,
table of that conversation, be be open about the gaps, and you'll stay at levels 1 and 2 of this and solve a lot of things a lot faster. And you might learn a couple things along the way.
totally. Very much so.
There you go.
I'm in full agreement with that one. The conversation, it's not a one.
Thoroughly foiled your attempts to keep us on time. I think we did it. Congrats to us.
Yay, us. We're very timeless.
Yes.
All right. So, but before we go, hey, we do have to give a shout out to our two sponsors, starting with number one, Cream City Marketing. We help a lot of small, medium-sized businesses with full comprehensive marketing strategies, both traditional and digital, in terms of implementing those and helping you execute on those. We become part of your marketing department and help you work through those. So with that, I'm also going to hand it back over to Michael for our second sponsor.
Spirity, we help you overcome your obstacles. We help you identify the source of those obstacles and remove the unseen and hidden roadblocks to your success. Love to have a conversation with you where we can explore some of these same fast fixes and identify what simple things you can do to achieve your greatness. Spirity.
The more you know. All right. So with that, I do know we've got some plans coming up. We are actually going to dive deeper into this in the coming weeks. So we're going to dive into this. We're going to dive into the generational stuff. We're going to dive into actually building out strategy for Q1 of 2021. Because guess what? 2020, this wonderful year, my favorite year of my lifetime, is almost over. And so we got to start planning for the next quarter. So with that being said, hit us up next time. It is a holiday week, but I promise you're not going to want to miss next week's episode, our Thanksgiving special. We're going to be hungry because Thanksgiving is obviously on Thursday, but this is a good way to enter it. Or if you're sitting at your relatives because you're taking Wednesday off, or because guess what, you can go and chill at their house because you're working remotely, tune in. Tune in. It's a good time to tune in. I don't even care if you sit back and enjoy your favorite beverage while you do that. In fact, that might make the comments even a little more fun for us. So with that, I am Brad James.
And I am Michael Rampola.
And just remember, just because it's a sketchy idea doesn't mean it's not worth looking into. All right. I see our producer nodding his head going, yes, look into those sketchy ideas. So the voice of God agrees. All right. With that, we'll see you next Wednesday. Take care.
Bye-bye.